Here's a quick intro of what's going on so far. There are 5 of us like to go on trips. One of us, at the end of our last trip, had the great idea to buy a big ugly boat, this one here, and we all worked all winter to turn it into this boat, this blue one here, which is the same boat, just different paint. And then we decided to take it to the Mississippi and go down the river. So here's Herbert the Boat, Part 3, Greenville to Natchez. Day 13, Departing Greenville.
We got a late start this morning because we had some trouble with our batteries. And
Well, we wanted to hook up a backup battery because we're having a few issues with the alternator.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure we had a backup battery set to turn on if we needed to stop and couldn't start the engine again.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, Dan and Dave decided they'd try to start Herbert on fire.
They actually almost blew Herbert up with how wrongly they hooked up the battery.
They melted the lead leads on the on the battery.
These are people...
Turns out black doesn't go to red.
Well, it does, but just for a very short amount of time.
Since Greenville is a bit far off the Mississippi, a couple of miles up this other river, it's a nice, calm drive without all the storming back to the main Mississippi. It is, however, a pretty busy shipping channel, so there are a lot of barges, but they're fairly small and easy to maneuver around, so I wouldn't worry about them.
So these guys passed us, and we're like, what? And they turned around, and we're like, what are you doing on the Mississippi? But they turned out to be pretty cool, and like gave us advice and like where to dock and what to watch out for and such. So they were cool. And there's the sleepy Kevin. There's my video selfie.
Why is your pants pulled up?
I don't know, maybe the wind did it. And there's us. So at this point, the barges got a lot bigger and a lot more frequent, which meant a lot more waves.
And more time to spiral the front bow rope.
Yeah, we had a lot of spare time. But we had this great idea of this totally safe and not dangerous at all game called bow surfing.
You guys are really impressive.
And the video, I mean, the waves kind of ended.
Dan, you were a beast of a man. What is that, like 5 pounds?
This is us exercising.
The main ramp and city part of Vicksburg is off of the Mississippi, so here's the entrance to it. And Vicksburg is a pretty cool little city, and if you have a chance to stay here, do so.
This is us motoring past some trees. Yep.
Did we mention the river's up like 20 feet?
Yeah, the river's up really high. And we could have just beached it actually, but we didn't.
And this is the least efficient way to put people in a boat.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys were doing at this point. This confused me.
I don't think I knew Dave's butt was in my head.
Our battery died because we fried it the day before, so we had to go take it to the AutoZone to get it charged. And when we got some food at the Boston chicken place, and then we were at the AutoZone, and these people just showed up at our door.
Well, a couple of really nice people gave us a ride, and now we're in the back of a truck and somewhere in what city is this? Vicksburg, Mississippi. Vicksburg, Mississippi. Thank you, Vicksburg,
Dave
Mississippi.
and I were at the AutoZone, and I'm inside getting the batteries charged, and Dave walks in. He's like, "Hey, our ride's here. It's time to go." And I thought he called a cab, and I walk outside, and there's no cab. And he's like, "Here's our ride over here," and there's this red pickup truck in the lot. And Dave's like, "Yeah." So they just showed up, and they're like, "Hey, do you know Kevin and Dan?" And they're like, "Yeah, we heard that you guys were here at the AutoZone, and you guys might need a ride back, so we drove over here looking for you guys." So they totally just drove to the AutoZone, not knowing, they didn't know who we were, they didn't know what we looked like. They just found us and gave us a ride back to our boat.
If you're wondering why we didn't just beach the boat, it's because the river can change its depth overnight, and we were worried about getting stuck up on the shore. You can see here the dock is just that. Instead, we would always anchor a few feet off of the shore to make sure the boat's in at least 6 feet of water. That way, if the river goes down a few feet, we're not grounded. The mornings were calm waters and pretty slow going, so it got a little boring. We had some free time on our hands. And at one point, you realize that the dirtiness of the water is cleaner than you are.
We never went to it.
Not Nacho.
Oh, this was Nachez.
This is Nacho.
So this is us trying to pull into Natchez.
Natchez.
Nacho.
Nacho.
Natchez.
It's
So-
Natchez.
The dinghy here, the biggest pain in the butt about the dinghy was having to put the motor on every time. And this is Dave's first time doing it by himself, which is definitely not worrying
He
Kyle
could do it all by himself.
at all. Well, yeah, he did. He did. Look at him being successful.
I'm gonna see him do it.
And coming from lakes and oceans and such where the water doesn't move, this was quite an experience for all of us to get accustomed to the water's always moving.
So this was our first attempt at docking, and we spent about 2 hours trying to dock here, and we just couldn't get our anchor to hook properly on the port side to keep us off the shore. So we ended up having to go down south about a quarter mile, and we found this tree that was hooked there. So we got the anchor to hook a little better here, and this is where we stayed the night.
No. We docked up on this beach right alongside of the Mississippi. We are just south of a town right now. We decided to dock the boat by anchoring it to a tree and a couple anchors out back. Now we are ferrying the food across back down to the beach. Now it's time to party.
We got everything anchored out, and we got everything ferried ashore. We got the barbecue going, we got music and a couple of drinks and all that, and we were a happy, happy people. Except for when we got back to the boat, we realized that we had a pretty bad fuel leak, and we couldn't stay in the boat overnight. It was just full of fumes. So we got everything into the dinghy that we could, or I ferried everyone across in complete darkness, aside from, city lights and such, to a Comfort Inn that was across the river and on the other side of the bridge. So there's us going across the river with just a little 5-horse propane outboard and some battery-operated lights. And it was a little scary. I ended up having to stay on the boat to keep watch on it, but I had slept on the bow on the outside so that Herbert could air out overnight.